Hey everyone, Mr. Tweet here. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the business cycle graph and how it relates to the PPC. The reality is that in ecom, we're not going to be manipulating the business cycle graph. We just use this to kind of create some vocabulary terms that describe the economy that we're going to be using for the entire entirety of quarter four. For instance, we'll be using all of these terms. Quarter three, whichever quarter you're in. So anyways. Our business cycle graph, right? Over time, in general, the economy is going to go up, right? And so that's kind of what the economy looks like over time. Nice, steady increase. In fact, if it was just a constant, steady increase, that would be wonderful. That would be the ideal, right? But what we get instead is, to a degree, our economy kind of goes up faster, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and so we end up with this cycle of ups and downs, right? What we call, on the upside, we call inflationary gaps, right? When we're up above that long-term trend, we're riding high, but it's kind of unsustainable, and then it comes crashing down below that long-term trend. We call that a recession, right? So anyways, our economy kind of cycles back and forth between these times of kind of like exciting growth, and then it crashes, and then we have these recessions, and then it builds back up, and then the bubble bursts and it falls back down, right? So in macroeconomics, what we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks, whether you're in quarter three or quarter four, what we're going to be looking at is kind of like, how can we smooth this transition out? How do we make it so that the highs aren't so high and thus the lows aren't so low? Because the highs feel really good. That's part of the problem, is that when we have that inflationary gap, usually there's really low unemployment. Usually wages are starting to go up. That at the moment, it feels really exciting. It feels really awesome. The problem is that it's unsustainable. And there's not enough, what we mean by unsustainable is that there's usually not enough labor to support the level of production that we're trying to create. So unemployment rate gets really low, so then wages start going up because employers are competing for employees, and it's hard to find people who do the jobs that you need. So you students are raising your wages, and when you start raising your wages, they start raising their prices, and pretty soon what we see is that it's just unsustainable level of production, and we're not actually able to produce that much more, but instead what we're doing is we're just driving up prices, which is not good for anyone, right? So this is our business cycle graph. Turns out that this is really the same thing as our PPC back from Unit 3. That if we draw a PPC that represents the entire economy, so I'm going to have capital goods on one axis, I'm going to put consumer goods on my other axis. I've got my PPC here, right? Remember that this line represents like the maximum possible production. Well, what this line, we can kind of redefine this line. This line can be redefined as this line right here. That those are the same. This is our long-term trend of what's possible right here. Any combination on that line is the long-term what's possible. But then in the short term, we can actually get beyond that by overproducing, by working our workers beyond what is sustainable, right? Lots of overtime, hiring workers away from other companies, right? We have really low unemployment, more job openings than people available to fill the jobs, so wages start to go up. That's our inflationary gap. That's our point right here, right? On the other hand, this part down here, when we're in this recession, in this trough, when we have high unemployment and we're underproducing, that point is on the inside of the curve right here. So what you can kind of think of is this graph right here that shows that long-term trade-off between inflationary gap and recessionary gap, and inflationary gap and recessionary gap. That's kind of like if these 2 points were moving back and forth over time across that line. What the business cycle graph does is it shows us the long-term trend, right? What the PPC does is it shows us a moment in time. So that if I wanted to show you like exactly what an economy looked like right now, I could put a point on there and you could tell me like, put a point right here, and you can say instantly, oh, that economy is in recession. Unemployment is high, GDP is low, they need to increase production somehow, right? Or I can put a point right here, and you can tell me, oh, that economy has an inflationary gap. Prices are going up, unemployment is really low, GDP is going up at an unsustainable level. The bubble's gonna burst and it's gonna pop, right? So that's our inflationary gap, right? Or I can put my point right here, and you can say, oh, that economy is right on their long-term trend, neither a recessionary gap nor an inflationary gap, right? What we call full employment, that we have the right amount of unemployment, we have the right amount of GDP growth, our prices are increasing at probably a very low amount, maybe 1 to 2%, so everything is kind of is good. So the PPC is really good for showing us like a moment in time, whereas if I wanted to see what's happening over time, that's where the business cycle graph comes in. All right, see you guys in the next video.